present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Ruth Landsberg of Congregation Agudas Achim, your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. The American education system seems to be taking a beating these days. Every day you hear about funding cuts and how the system on the whole just doesn't measure up to educational programs in other countries. Unfortunately, a little over a month ago, a unique teaching program here in Austin faced the dilemma of its doors closing. Austin's news media covered the story. Here's how Channel 7 News reported.
Well, tomorrow will be your last chance to check out the exhibits at Discovery Hall for a while. Austin's only hands-on science center is looking for a new location after the building housing their donated location was sold. They will be open on July 20th for a garage sale of sorts featuring computer and office equipment. Discovery Hall is expected to reopen in September. Center officials regard the closing as a temporary setback.
So as you just saw, Discovery Hall is Austin's only hands-on science center. The center is part of a growing trend in educational resources that are available outside of the formal public or private school system. It allows students, teachers, and parents an opportunity to explore science beyond the traditional curriculum. Today, we visit with some of the people who keep Discovery Hall alive in often trying circumstances. Joining us are Joyce Stotts, the acting executive director of Discovery Hall, Stephen Pinson, the operations coordinator, and Kelly Googe, a veteran volunteer at Discovery Hall. And I'd like to welcome you all to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Joyce, I'd like to start, I guess, by asking you a little bit about the current operations. We see that there's some problems there.
The biggest problem is getting us to a new space and getting our programs back in operating condition. We have a new building, we've moved ourselves into it, and we're in the process of rehabilitating that for our use. It's another donated facility, thank goodness, because that's what we can afford. We're in the process of getting the Science Center back in running condition to serve the people who come visit the various exhibits we have. And we have our outreach programs continuing. They've gone on through the summer despite the fact that the center's been closed and in relocation.
So in talking about the previous site of Discovery Hall and the current site, everything has to be donated, the building and all the services with that?
As much as we can get. We run on a shoestring budget. We primarily are funded by the programs we run as outreach programs and by our visitors coming in to visit the center. And so we don't have a lot of cash.
Especially with no visitors coming into the center right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of outreach programs, as Joyce mentioned. And Stephen, do you work a lot with those outreach programs?
Not directly as far as outreach off-site. There is an education director who is in charge of all of the community outreach programs that run through the elementary schools and things that we do with different organizations in the community. As far as programs on-site, which are not running currently, those I deal with at a personal level, and that's field trips that come into the Science Center.
So with the organizations that you work with, both with the outreach programs and the groups that come into Discovery Hall, tell me a little bit about those. Do you work with a lot of the local churches?
In general, we do work with many different churches and different groups within the churches, for instance, daycare centers that run out of churches or different organizations that are somehow affiliated with different churches and hold their meetings at the church. So there we have groups that are coming into Discovery Hall from churches and also times where we go out to churches. For instance, our summer camp is held sometimes at area churches, or sometimes we send out our traveling planetarium to different churches. So
Is the summer camp a pretty big program there?
it's our biggest program at Discovery Hall, and so we're really glad that we can keep that running even though the Science Center is in relocation right now.
So all of the outreach programs just continue and you keep everything in-house is closed right now. How's that working with the staff? Kelly, I know you're a volunteer there, and it must be pretty serious stuff to be moving.
Very.
Have you been helping?
Your muscles are growing every day, is that right?
And you've been helping a lot with the move?
All this weekend and yesterday. These muscles.
So you're feeling pretty sore right now?
Very sore.
Very sore. Are there a lot of different types of volunteers there?
Yeah, we have high school students, and I'm the only junior high student. And we have teachers that do planetarium shows, and there's a lot of different people there.
I understand there are a lot of students also from the university.
They come in and they do 45 hours for credits. Most of them are seniors or juniors, ready to get out of school.
So, Stephen, you probably work a lot with the volunteers also.
On a day-to-day basis, yeah, there are usually, quite a few college volunteers, with empty hands wanting something to do, and lately we've been able to fill them. So we're actually pretty fortunate that we do have the volunteers that we do. We've been very lucky.
We wouldn't be able to operate without them. There are so many little tasks that the full-time and part-time staff can't possibly handle. And it's marvelous to see how our operations effectiveness gets amplified by those volunteers.
Well, there's little tasks and big tasks, because I noticed that you're the acting executive director. There's not a paid director there right now.
So this is another volunteer activity, yes. This is a 15-hour volunteer activity, which turns into an awful lot of work.
So you've been involved for a long time, haven't you? Can you tell me a little bit about the history? How did Discovery Hall get to this point where everybody's moving?
Okay. Well, it's a nonprofit educational organization that was founded in about 1984, aimed at bringing hands-on science to the community through outreach activities and through our Science Center. And over that period of 7 years or so, we've evolved the outreach programs that Stephen described before, as well as creating a Science Center that really bursts at the seams when it's confined to about 10,000 square feet.
And that's the size of?
That's the size of the old location. So our new location now is about 15,000 square feet, which gives us a nice big space for exhibits, and we'll be able to expand much more than we had before. And we'll be able to much more comfortably accommodate traveling exhibits. As we got started 7 years ago, we were in another space in the city, and we're building up a small exhibits area and gradually built up the summer camp program, the after-school clubs program. We had some programs, too, that no longer exist that evolved away for some of the outreach things. But the things we're doing today are trying to sync with what the schools need in enrichment that they can't provide in their standard science curriculum. And we're also trying to bring more things into the Science Center that meet the needs of the public to understand what's going on in science and technology. With our newer space, we'll be able to bring in more traveling exhibits more easily than we did before. We were really cramped whenever we brought in a traveling exhibit to the old space and had to find homes for all of our old exhibits and put them behind closed doors and things like that.
Seems like you're very in touch with the community, with what the needs are of the schools, both for the teachers, what they need to accomplish, whatever they need to accomplish their curriculum. And Kelly mentioned the students that need to get credit. Some of these volunteers get credit for the work that they do at Discovery Hall. Do you get any credit at your school?
No.
Some of the university students do, I guess.
Well, some of the high school students also do internship sorts of credit and get at least a checkoff credit. It's not an academic credit, but I think they do things for programs that are running at their schools, too.
Guess so.
Well, tell me a little bit about this new space. Where's it located? How can we find Discovery Hall?
Okay.
Maybe we can have an opportunity to show our viewers how to find Discovery Hall.
It's at 700 Congress. It's at the northwest corner of 7th and Congress Avenue. And it used to be, we hear in its ancient history, a theater. And more recently, it was a clothing store. It was a learner shops store. And so people will probably remember the signs that were on both 7th and Congress that identified it as learner shops. And that's gradually being replaced by the signs that say Discovery Hall and do your learning and thinking here for a while. It's a nice corner exposure with lots of window space, so we'll be able to show people in the windows what's going on inside and what's going on elsewhere. And we're going to try to use those windows, I think, to spark some thinking in people also. We've got some ideas about puzzles we'll put in the window and challenges for people to think about and earn free entry or earn something from the store or something like that.
So it's all interactive. Everything that you do there is really hands-on. Do you see when you work with the kids in the museum, Kelly, that they really go up and hassle with the different exhibits?
Yeah, they're kind of mind-teasing. They want to learn. I mean, it makes science fun for the kids. It's not like being in a classroom and lecturing to the kids. It's fun.
Well, that's good. That's good, I think, as a resource probably for parents also to bring their kids in there.
Over time, too, it's been a resource for teachers as teachers are learning to do more hands-on things with their classes. One of the programs that we're going to be getting involved with in the next several months is the integration of the science curriculum in the middle grades.
That's a big issue right now.
And it's a very big issue. It's an issue that needs textbook sources, material sources, experiences that can be used by teachers and by families and students as they learn about the concept-based science curriculum. And so we're working with people from the university and from the city school districts in this area on how Discovery Hall can be a resource for them, for the teachers, for the students, for families. We expect that parents are going to want some of the experiences that the kids have too. I think Kelly and Stephen would both attest to the fact that parents wander through these exhibits and wonder what's going on and try to help their kids.
It's not just for the kids. The parents
No.
sort of learn with them.
In fact, when people call up, we get lots of phone calls with people asking, what age is this geared towards? And it's a difficult question to answer because most of the programs that we do in the community are for elementary age children. But we have preschool classes, we have kindergartners, we have high school classes, and then we have adults of all ages coming through the Science Center regularly.
The funniest question, too, is when people who are adults call and say, can I come even if I don't have a kid?
Right.
Do you get a lot of really strange phone calls there? I mean, because it seems that it really behaves as a community resource in science, and it's not directly linked with the school system,
Right.
is it? And it's not directly linked with the city.
We do get calls of all kinds. Lots of them are directed towards our store. We do have a gift shop which sells science educational toys. And lots of people call looking for things that we don't even carry. They want, test tubes and flasks and different
Airplane
chemicals.
glue.
And usually we refer those calls to University of Texas Science Department. During the eclipse, we got dozens of phone calls about, whether it was safe to swim during the eclipse, whether it was safe to be outside at all during the eclipse. And so we do get lots of interesting phone calls, but I think we really enjoy that role. We are glad to be able to offer that kind of service to the Austin community.
So that's sort of built into what the staff and the volunteers do there is just, in general, serving as a resource to the community. It's a big part of it.
I think so.
Yeah, one of the treasures of our volunteers to us is having them there to answer the telephone because the phone rings all day long. And we've got several lines. We don't tell people about all of them, but we need several phone lines just to answer the various and sundry questions that come in.
And you get some difficult phone calls sometimes? Tough questions?
Yeah.
Lots of different things. I was thinking, as you were talking, that there's another angle in our education system that we didn't touch on, and that is homeschooling. Parents who teach their children at home. Is this a resource that's available to them?
Most definitely. We get many homeschool groups that come through the hall on field trips, and they're very definitely an interesting group, and we enjoy dealing with them. It's interesting to note the different levels of classes that come through there. Some are, incredibly well organized and socialized, and it depends so much on how long a group of children has been together, how well they interact together, and what they get out of the Science Museum. So on a daily basis, we learn so many different things just from the different groups of kids that we get through the Science Center. So it's an amazing thing to really look at every day.
We've had some real challenges, too. Taking a group of blind kids through hands-on exhibits
Yes.
is a very difficult thing to do, but it's still an experience that can be very rich for those kids.
And also for the person who brings them around.
And for that person, too, who gets questions that you don't expect, such as, how high is the ceiling in this building?
Right.
We know that, everybody else can see that, but that's something somebody needs to understand when he's walking through blind.
So it sounds like it's a really vigorous organization, and there's a lot going on there. Is there a real specific long-range plan for Discovery Hall? Does it have a goal in sight?
It's got goals in sight. There are medium-term plans and then long-range plans. We're looking in the medium term for the next 3 years or so at expanding the programs we have, growing the public recognition of Discovery Hall. I think it's safe to say that everybody who's been there, who's been involved in our outreach programs, is a strong supporter of Discovery Hall. But there's a lot of the Austin community that we just haven't reached yet. So for the next several years, our mission is to increase our contact, increase our visibility, and our new space should help that a lot, being able to bring in more programs. The Board of Directors has a long-range plan, too, that's under development, which we hope to have in effect in about 3 years, where we have a larger science center with a planetarium that is a full-fledged planetarium, with an Omnimax theater that brings in a lot of capability that we don't have in this community yet, and attendant with it a large exhibit space for exhibits that are like the ones we have today, but many more of them, and perhaps more thematically oriented exhibits that display some of the technologies of Texas in particular, as well as lead people of all ages through learning about technology that's emerging and science application that's emerging these days. So our vision in 3 years is to be in a space that's among us and that generates a lot of visitor traffic as well as working with our programs.
It's a big, bold vision.
It's a big, bold vision. It's a matter of taking our visitor population today, which is about 25,000, and blowing that up 10 times and trying to get 250,000 people through the Science Center each year.
It seems that it's a very unique resource. I mean, do you find that there's I don't want to say competition, but being a science resource in Austin, how far out do you reach?
Well, there's a big difference between where we reach now and what our goal is. Right now, we do compete a lot. We find ourselves in competition because we're a small organization. You know, we try, I think the biggest problem we have right now probably is that our staff sometimes is not capable of the actual outreach that we do on a day-to-day basis, so sometimes we find ourselves strapped. It's kind of the question is, you know, how much can we do and how much can we, you know, actually accomplish right now? So, you know, there are other resources out there. There's, you know, different organizations in the Austin community which sort of touch on the same kind of things that we do. And where we pride ourselves is that we are, I think, sort of narrow-minded probably isn't the best word, but we focused. We are very focused on science, which is, I think, a unique thing in the museum, you know, community and the educational community here in Austin.
But even so, we reach out to communities that are nearby, but as far away as Bastrop and San Marcos and certainly Georgetown and Pflugerville. The greater Austin community is the group we serve today. We've had some consulting activities from Discovery Hall with other organizations in the Valley trying to set up a museum, some contacts with museums around the country as we look for resources and share resources.
Yeah, this isn't a unique concept.
This isn't a unique concept.
This is built in other cities.
No, this is one where there are many demands for hands-on science centers. In fact, when you look at attendance statistics across all of the science centers, there are more people who visit science centers than go to baseball games, for example. And that blew me away when I first learned that statistic. But if you think about the times that you've gone traveling, you've probably visited places like the Exploratorium in San Francisco, or the science museums in Chicago or St. Louis or Boston or New York. I mean, they're things that everybody has on their list when they go visit places. In fact, tourism is what brings many of the visitors into the Science Center at Discovery Hall. Something like 80% of the people who walk through our doors just to go through the exhibits are people who are visiting Austin. So tourism is definitely a big piece of what we do.
And you're located so close to the Capitol, it must be a big part of the downtown scene. Do you feel it really, how do you feel being a part of the downtown scene? It's a really neat district there.
I think at least so far, it's definitely enhanced the amount of people that come through the Science Center. Just being downtown and just being able to tell someone on the phone, you know, we're just, you know, walking distance from the Capitol. Lots of school groups that come through, you know, have picnics on the Capitol grounds and then walk down to Discovery Hall or walk to the Capitol from Discovery Hall. So in that way, I think we've been fortunate. We'd like to have more parking, which isn't exactly available downtown, but in our move, we're even closer to the Capitol, and I think for right now, at least, it's been a very good location for us.
So, and probably also good for the downtown district.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that you pick up a lot of the activity on the weekends. You volunteer on the weekends, don't you? Is there pretty high traffic?
Some weekends, when we had the parade for the troops, we had a lot of people come in for the solar eclipse. Tons of people were there.
So depending on what the climate is downtown, it really becomes a part of the whole network of downtown activities.
Right.
And we can easily take advantage of things like the Pecan Street Festival, participate, point people back to Discovery Hall. Things that are happening downtown are things we can get involved with. The Christmas events that get activities sponsored in various places. So, you know, it's a big help.
All the holidays. The long-range plan keeps you near the downtown area?
At this point, yes. We don't know exactly where we'll be with our new building, but we have wishes. We have wishes, like a lot of the other science-related and museum-related groups in Austin. We all have wishes of staying around the Town Lake, downtown Austin area. There have been plans over the years that have a stream of museums and science centers and things of that sort right along Town Lake. And if that could come to pass, I think we'd all be in great shape.
Do you feel like there's a lot of support for that?
I think it's kind of sleeping right now. Right now, a lot of us are thinking about how to relate to the location of the convention center. And that still is very much the same corridor. But being close to the convention center, so again, people can walk as they're visiting the city is really important. But we also think it's really important to have the various museums and centers close to each other. I know when I visit a city, I like a layout of something like the Smithsonian in Washington, where you can quite literally walk for blocks and go from one to the other. Having something like that in Austin would be great.
You mentioned in your long-range plan that you're hoping to build an OmniMax theater and a planetarium. What are the current programs that you have like that?
Well, I mentioned before that we have a portable planetarium program, which we call our Star Lab, and we have one that stays in-house at the Science Center and also one that we take out just about anywhere that can accommodate it. And that includes elementary schools, it includes, you know, businesses sometimes like to rent it for different functions that they have, church groups, summer camp programs that are held at Boy Scout camps. So we do a lot with it right now. We don't have anything like an OmniMax theater currently. But
we have a videotape.
How do you, a VCR?
VCR,
Great.
it's great.
And how do you take a planetarium with you to another site? That's sort of hard to imagine.
Well, it's sort of hard to describe. It's
Do your best.
sort of like an inflatable dome is how I can best describe it. If you've ever seen one of the moonwalk rides at a carnival where it's a big inflatable bubble, that's sort of what the planetarium looks like. And it's very easy to inflate and deflate. You do it with a box fan, and you simply roll it up into a duffel bag that you can carry with you. So it's extremely portable and easy to move.
It's a lot of interesting programming there. It's very creative things. How are these sort of programs funded? Is it mostly through the programming?
It's mostly through the programming. Use of the planetarium off-site has a rental fee, and if we send somebody to do the shows, that has a personnel fee. All of our camps and club activities have fees for attendance. We have a little bit of grants income, and that will be growing over the next several years. As we get a director on board who's a permanent director, one of the goals of that person is to do a lot more fundraising from grant resources that are foundations and that are federal government related grants. There's some very interesting things that are being pursued right now. There are applications going into NSF and to the Association of Science and Technology Centers during the summer.
Special sorts of grants?
They do special sorts of grants, things like one that's titled Informal Science Education, exactly directed at the kinds of programs that Discovery Hall does. There's one from Aztec, the Association of Science and Technology Centers, aimed at programs that can be done at the center for things like volunteer activities and for educational activities that gets youth, especially youth at risk, involved with science and technology activities. And so those are some of the kinds of things we'll be applying for and working on getting funding from to both enhance our funding and to enhance the programming we have available.
Do you reach out often to the at-risk community? Is it pretty broadly based?
We do. I think there's a lot more that any organization could do as far as that goes, but we do a lot already. We work with, we mentioned handicap groups or disabled groups. We have School for the Deaf and School for the Blind come regularly to the Science Center for field trips. We work with a group called TAME, which is Texas Association for Minority Engineers. We've done programming with them. I had to make sure that was the right.
It's close.
I saw you hanging in there.
We've done lots of programming with them in the past. Our long-range plan definitely addresses what we can do to better increase what we do with at-risk groups, and especially with the growing Hispanic population in the greater Austin community.
We have several people who are acting as advisors to the board right now, too, who are helping us put together some programs for minority children of various types and for the women and in our area, especially the Hispanics, who are going to be a greater number of our employment population over the next several years.
So the whole thing is very broad-based.
It's growing.
It's very broad-based. Well, it looks like quite an exciting program you guys have there, and I wish you a lot of luck with your grand opening. When is that taking place?
September 14th. Everybody cross their fingers, toes.
Do you have any special plans for your grand opening?
Well, we've been postponing our annual Space Month event for about 3 months now, so we hope to open with Space Month, which is models that come from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. It's one of our most popular traveling exhibits that we have every year, and we hope to kick off our
traveling
grand
exhibits
opening
that you bring in?
That we bring in to the Science Center.
That, along with a lot of spectacular things from in the city. Getting our robot group to come in and do one of their shows, and getting some things from the other science activities around the city.
So it should be a very grand and spectacular event. Another volunteer